Good morning, welcome to my YouTube channel, Loc'D. I don't even know if it'll be morning, but whatever it is, I hope that you're having a good blink. So today's video is, it's been really coming in the making for a long time, and I want to let you know the structure of this video. So first, I'm going to give you the intro, talk to you about what's going to happen in this video. Then you will get my book reviews of all the books in order according to the year that it was released. And then I will do an outro. So I want to say thank you for watching this video. It is going to be about the last 10 years of Goodreads Choice Awards winners in the memoir category. And you're going to see what's going to happen. This collaboration was created by Izzy from Happy From Now and Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany, and they allowed myself and other content creators to be a part of this huge compendium of reviewing the last 10 years of Goodreads Choice Awards winners, and everyone have a different category that they're choosing. And for the purposes of this video, mine is memoirs. I'm just excited to do this. I didn't think that I'll be able to do it, and I got it done in record time. The editing, we still working on that, but I got it done, all the books read in the record time. I want to say that currently the HarperCollins union is still on strike. There are some titles that are part of this video that are HarperCollins are the publishers, or there's some type of imprint. And I researched as much as I could and found that some of these fit that. So you will see me having like a little thing at the bottom showing you that that book was either HarperCollins or HarperCollins imprint, if I'm saying that correctly. Also, if you are looking for ways to support HarperCollins Union, all of those links and things like that will be in the description box below, and a link to their Instagram. I want you to know also that sometimes you'll see clothes that are the same because I did read them out of order, but I made sure they were in order for this video. Now let's get into the first book review, vlog style, of the memoirs for the Goodreads Choice Awards winner for 2012. All right, one day I'm gonna get my lighting together, and I'm like trying, maybe I gotta hit you, whatever. It's kind of blinding me, but I gotta see. I'll be talking about the 10 winners of the last 10 years from the Goodreads Choice Awards. I'm gonna let you know right here, it's very much giving, but here we are, and I think I'm going to talk about that in the end. Also give my opinions on some other things towards the end. If the old noggin remember, I'll try to write it down after this video. The date right now is December 1st, so I don't know who won the 2022 book pick. Probably Jeanette. I really hope that is Viola, but here we are. Injustices happen every day. Let's talk about 2012. 2012 is Wild by Sheryl Strayed. I already read that book. I truly enjoyed it, and enjoyed it in the sense of it was a hard book to get through because that lady really been through a lot. There was a section where she, was in the bathroom and something happened with her nails. If y'all read it, y'all know what I'm talking about. And that is one part of the book that this mainly sticks with me, of how she was like, look, I'm gonna go on this journey, I'm gonna do it, I am grieving, I'm experiencing a lot of things, and I'm having a lot of emotional trauma happening to me. And I can't remember if there was physical trauma, but I'm sure that there were. Reading this book and watching her go through all these things, and just really determined to get her end goal and make sure that she goes on this walk. And it wasn't like a walk. I'll put here like the name of it because I can't remember. It's like she was walking for a long amount of time, if memory serves. I was just reading and I was like, wow, she's really going through it while also going on this journey. She went on this journey to find herself, end up finding herself, and in the most like peculiar ways, if that's a word. I know that's a word, I just don't think that I said it correctly. So again, enjoyed the book. There's also a movie starring Reese Witherspoon as well. So the next book is I Am Malala, and I read that book as well. I just remember tearing up, being like, wow, to have such courage at such a young age and being like, no, you're going to hear me, you're going to hear my voice. A situation and an environment where a woman's voice was just not to be heard. It's also an age thing, and to be brutally attacked because of you standing up for yourself. Because I'm unable to give you like my first impressions of this book, I'm gonna tell you what I thought of it in February. On February 3rd, 2019, I read this book and I said, spoiler alert, before reading I Am Malala, I asked my friends who read as much as I do if they read it. Most of their responses were yes, but it wasn't good. I'm starting to think they maybe were mistaken. Reading about Malala's life, I thought it drew some similarities to Anne Frank's life. Her story and how much she fought for education inspired me. In the book, she said, when pencils are taken from you, you realize how important education is. This quote put chills in my body because you never know how good you have something until it's gone. Also, to have so much self-reflection at a young age also reminded me of Anne Frank and how often she wanted to look at things from multiple points of view. I kept reminding myself that the brave doesn't think about themselves, they think about the future and freedom. Malala thought about the future and freedom. She is everyone's daughter, as her father said. It was great to read about how supportive her parents were of her. Her parents gave her tips to be safe, but never stopped her from fighting against the Taliban, egregious laws that restricted people from being human. One of my favorite things about this book is the side stories about other people in her life. Stories about other people in memoirs like this give added context to the environment during this period of Malala's life. Lastly, in no way do I think the meaning of Malala's name, grief-stricken, is an accurate depiction of who she is. I hope that all of us can take a page out of her book and stand for the things in which matter the most to us. I can't believe I wrote that, but shout out to Bree. She did that, and I'm not gonna add any more because past Bree, she did it. And that's it. This star won't go out, something like that. I will put, you will see pictures of things. This has been a very hard book to listen to. I almost want to DNF it because it is talking about this young girl who has cancer, and this book is about like things that she thought, hopes that she has, input from John Green, input from you know, her physicians, her parents, and it's just hard for me to listen to this because my mom has cancer and we found out April of 2020 that she has cancer. I've been through a lot of shit in my life, but this gotta be the hardest thing for me to come to terms with, and I don't think I have, because like when you have cancer, there's a very real possibility that you will die. And I understand that I'm 32 and I'm getting to an age where I'm starting to see, you know, friends and family members, parents die. And even in the communication struggles my mother and I have, I am not ready for that. So I just have to keep pausing this book when I can, because it's really hard to listen to this young kid, you know, she's so young, talking about all these things she wants and all the things she wants to do and she can't do them. And I think about my mom. I mean, she's lived a life much longer than this little girl. Just because you lived a longer life don't mean you still ain't got things you're looking forward to. And it's just a hard book to get through. Another thing that I find very hard for me to connect with in this book is the constant like callback to Christianity and like how much she prays, and it's like every chapter has to do with like, you know, deep devotion of some kind to the Lord, to Jesus. And I have my thoughts of growing up as a Christian Baptist, and I've kind of stepped away from that, and it's just hard to hear that as well, to have like this faith, this deep faith in something when you feel so hopeless. And I know a lot of people say, you know, the devil likes to test you when you are in grounds of uncertainty, and you got to keep your faith and stay you know, steadfast in your faith to the Lord, and he will make sure that you get through it. But in my experience, I've never known that to be true. Yeah, that's really hard to even say publicly. It's not something I say publicly. 2023 and 2022 is all about me just trying to be more authentically myself, and that's what I have there. So I will let y'all know more thoughts I have about this book. I think it's a must read, especially if you are also grieving or also having a loved one who have cancer or had a cancer scare. This definitely puts a lot of things in perspective. And to be so 12, she was just so full of life, and you know, it's just hard. It's hard. So I will see y'all in the next clip. Hey y'all, not me coming on with my shirt. Y'all know I love a matching PJ. Let me step outside. Ugh. Anyway, to talk about This Star Won't Go Out. And you see me looking because y'all, the snow is real. Let me show y'all. I don't know if y'all can see that because I just turned the camera, but the snow is coming in. I have not worked since last Thursday because there's been 3 snowstorms back to back to back. Whew, This Star Won't Go Out. It really, I cried. I don't even know any other way to put it. I was so much emotionally invested that I don't know how I'm gonna start the next book, because I just feel like maybe there's some unresolved emotions that I haven't quite processed about my mom, and I don't think I ever will like process everything, but I do think it is doing me a disservice if I don't take some time to just be in the moment. I don't like crushing down my emotions, although I have a history of doing that. So I'm just gonna take some time, and it's gonna be probably a little bit before I come back on here and let y'all know about the next books. But it got me to know how hard she fought and how loving she was and how honest she was about how cancer truly sucked. I don't know, it was inspiring, it was sad, it was just the grief. You can hear it on every person who contributed to this book. Yeah, and shout out to her mom for being so steadfast and resilient in helping her, and also her dad and her siblings. Yeah, it was hard. Yeah, and that's all I will say there, and then I'll let y'all know when it's time for me to talk about the next book. Okay, y'all, honestly and truthfully, I finished a work in progress a month ago. I thought I did a video recording of it, but here I sit talking to you realizing fake news is upon us, and I'm editing it, so I came in to, you know, pop into here vlog style. Sorry if you see some tears. I was rewatching my views of a book and cried again. What I'm saying is I finished this book and it's following this young man named Connor. What I remember most about it, when he was like, yeah, 30-year-olds don't get me, and I just being like, 30-year-olds, we created the internet, what are you talking about? And then I realized when this book was written, I wasn't 30 yet, so he wasn't talking about me. So I had to pull it back. But it follows the story of Connor, and he is coming to terms with his identity, how he was raised, what people thought of him, coming out, what that looks like, and being a content creator in an age where people don't take content creation seriously. So while I was reading this book, I kept thinking, you know, for me personally, in memoirs, I like a chunky book, and that's just me. I give me the 500 plus. Except Barack, for the Promised Land, did we need a dissertation that long? Just saying, brevity, sir, we did not need that long book. For the most part, I do like a long book, and I just felt like this was giving like just like snapshots of his life, which is like okay, you know, but I like a book that goes more into depth. I think that's why I'm having trouble with some of the books on this list, even though they also chunky too. They're just not going in depth like I would have wanted them to for certain reasons, and that's only because I'm curious about certain things, like most readers are, and you're like, oh, I wonder about that, and I wish they would have went in more about that. So that's how I feel about this book. It was interesting to listen to him talk about a set of parents that is different from my own, and I always love listening to how other people parent their children, whether it is something I agree with or don't agree with. It is good for me to know the different parenting styles that are out there, and to also adjust that in my like role as an auntie, really what that's about. But overall, I thought this was an okay memoir. Y'all, I've tried tried to film this like 12 times and it just like wouldn't work. I'm having problems with trying to rank the books that I'm reading for this project. I hope that I figure out some kind of way to rank them. I'm thinking books that I got the most out of versus books I didn't get that much out of, and I'm hoping that that is the metric in which I rank them all at the end of this video. So on to the next book. And the way I bawled like a baby at the end of that book. So let me tell you my first impressions of When Breath Becomes Air. It really put to me in perspective how short life is. And I know a lot of people say that, but there are people in the world who go out and want to achieve a specific type of greatness. This author, Paul, went out, he was a surgeon, and said, hey, I'm gonna go through rigorous education and I am going to stay focused at the task at hand. And not only did he have those issues, academia being what it is, he also had the issue with him and his wife trying to bring a child into this world, and there were so many issues around that, including fertility issues. To go through all of that, then being told that you have type of condition, I think it was a cancer, that is essentially inoperable. And going through life knowing that your wife and you have this young child, or you will have this young child, I can't remember what happened specifically in that realm, but going through life and knowing all of that, and also in a way it was kind of like him writing a letter to his child, to his wife, of saying, you know, this is what I've done, this is what I've learned, I love you. It was just so complex that I just couldn't help but to cry. And then the end is when his wife comes in and she tells you, you know, what's going on, because if memory serves me, I think he passed away before the book was even done. Yeah, it was heart-wrenching. It was very heart-wrenching, and I did give it 3 stars for other things, but if you are looking for a book that's gonna talk to you about life and grief and what that means to live and live beautifully, like this book was that. And I'm wondering why I said 3, because I remember feeling satisfied and saddened at the end of this book. So I'll tell you what myself said in 2020. I said, reading this book was hard and interesting. This story follows a man with a very serious and low rate of survival disease. He writes the book discussing his marriage, his family, having children, and his journey of processing his death. He took all the tests for his disease and most of the medication, only to realize that he was dying in the end. Lots of people don't know why he chose to write this book, but it meant something to him to try to write it. A few people helped him write this book, and there are times of sadness, triumph, and pure grief. This book is a perfect example of having your whole life planned only for death to be at your doorstep in an instant. This book was a continual theme of death, which I think is important in understanding his life. This book took me by surprise. I wanted him to survive, but that was not the case. So the next book that I'll be reading, which is in 2017, that winner was What Happened by Hillary Rodham Clinton. And I got thoughts about Hillary. So to give y'all another update, I finished What Happened by Hillary Clinton, and let me tell y'all, up to 71% I was engaged, and like the last end of it just felt very repetitive of things she said before. What I did like is how she was like, you know, I'm gonna speak my truth and I'm gonna talk about what happened in the 2016 election and how I lost to Trump, but I'm also going to, you know, say this is where I went wrong and this could have been done better, etc. The only thing, not the only thing, there were a couple critiques. I've read a couple books or memoirs written by presidents or books about them, and it just huge on America being great and making America great, this great country. And I don't know if because I have intersectional marginalized identities that it finds me, it's really hard for me to connect to words like that, because I don't just think of myself, I think of the people that I love, I think of my ancestors. So it's really hard for me to connect with words like that, and they would be different if there was some kind of acknowledgement on American history from politicians on a regular basis, and there was some form of reparations that would be given, or talk about reparations of any form, land back of any form, but we don't have those conversations. It's like we want to forget about it, and people be like, oh, people are disrupting or targeting our democracy and don't care about what our forefathers. And it's just like, the forefathers took this country from indigenous people. They showed up on bullshit. Yeah, they didn't like the king, they didn't like the monarchy, they wanted to have their own place. But you say that you don't like being discriminated against, treated harshly, treated unfairly, only for you to come here and do the same thing. If that ain't the pot calling the kettle, I don't know. And I'm really giving y'all just a brush down on US history, because I'm not gonna say that I'm a historian by any chance, but it just it didn't fit me right hearing Hillary say those words, and other politicians. It's not just her. And another thing that I thought was interesting is how in her book she talked a lot about how Roe v. Wade is under attack, and she's afraid for what's going to happen to women's reproductive rights, or, you know, people with vaginas and people with reproductive systems that, you know, babies come from. She nailed it on the head. I almost got emotional when she was talking about that. I was like, woo. Yep, that sounds about right. The next book I'm reading right now is called Educated, and I've heard some not so savory things about this memoir, and I started it, and right away, 6 minutes into the audiobook, the author wrote describing indigenous people in a way that made me feel uncomfortable. You know, I'll have to unpack that later, but it made me feel some type of way. And then once I continued to listen to the book and listen to this author and their upbringing, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I'm coming from a place of having education and privilege, and not, I won't say not understanding, but that privilege put a light on something that they were doing. Like, ooh, why would you do that? You should already know that. And I'm like, why would their young self know that if they didn't even have a birth certificate till they're in double digits? And why would they know that if they didn't go to school and didn't have access to school and didn't have access to nobody but their siblings, really, and maybe grandma, but that was it. So I had to pull back on some of the things that I'm like, you should know this. But, you know, a lot of times people like to think like, I can't believe something like that will happen. A lot of things still happen in the US, and this is just where we're at. And it's interesting also, I don't know much about Mormonism. I think that was one of the surprises while reading this book, is learning about this person and their relationship with Mormonism, which is something I don't know much about. So that has been interesting to hear, and I will let y'all know some other thoughts as they come along. I don't know. So just doing like a 2-second check-in. It is cold AF and I'm on my way to work. I will say Educated is not as entertaining as Jonathan book was entertaining. Also like pulling at your heartstrings. Educated is just pulling at your heartstrings. There's no humor. No aspects of like Jonathan work and Educated. Of course, they're two different people. But I just wanted to point out that difference. And you don't always have to be entertained to talk about, to hear or to read about someone else's life. So that was just something I was thinking about, like those contradictions in my mind. Y'all, I'm coming out of my bed, haven't said a word to anybody to talk about this book. Let me see if I need this light. I just have to come and talk to y'all about this book. It's really bringing me through it, and I have a couple emotions that contradict themselves because I am a human being and I'm a therapist, and I just need to talk to y'all about it. So the first thing is I'm 80% through and I want to DNF it, but I want to complete it because I'm also a completist and want to complete it for this video, but I am struggling. So number one, there was a passage that I'm going to read to you that really rubbed me the wrong way. So the author was talking about her grandmother who told her stories about Apache women. Let's go to why I'm upset about this book. Let's get there. The author talks about her grandma again, and she goes, according to grandma, 100 years ago, a tribe of Apaches had fought the U.S. cavalry on those fated rocks. The tribe was outnumbered, the battle lost, the war over. All that was left to do was wait to die. Soon after the battle began, the warriors became trapped on a ledge, unwilling to suffer a humiliating defeat. Cut down one by one as they tried to break through the cavalry, they mounted their horses and charged off the face of the mountain. When the Apache women found their broken bodies on the rocks below, they cried huge, desperate tears, which turned to stone when they touched the earth. Then she goes on to continue talking about these Apache women and the travesties they endured. Then it goes to the next story. And the next story is about her mom and I think her dad and her brother Tyler in the car. A car accident happened. Mom ended up getting so injured that she had a traumatic brain injury. And it didn't get like medical assistance for it because, you know, her family was totally against modern medicine and, you know, just only focused on herbal remedies to fix anything that ailed them. So then after her seeing her mom go through such pain and being almost close to death, like the lady was pretty close to death, she then compared her mom's accident to Apache women and them losing their spouses and being murdered and the men of the tribes being outnumbered. So I immediately stopped the book and I said, I'm not ever trying to claim that we need to be doing pain Olympics, but I understand that there are degrees to pain, right? I hate when people be like, your trauma is not as bad as my trauma because I did all of this and this is what happened to me. You know, I don't feel like any of that is healthy. However, I do think recognizing that there are different types of trauma is important, right? Like understanding that there are different levels to it without diminishing someone's trauma or making it seem like your trauma is worse than theirs. So follow me with this because y'all, I'm so like in my brain. And the thing is, I was supposed to film this clip days ago, but I just like needed to work through it in my brain, and clearly I'm still stuck on it. I'm gonna leave it to y'all in the comments and then I'll just respond. How can you compare your brother mistakenly causing an accident that your mom got seriously injured to a group of colonizers trying to take over a certain part of this community where indigenous people lived, murdered them, outnumbered, that's what you said, killed them, probably sexually assaulted them, displaced them, skinned them, took their language from them, and then say, I now understand what the Apache women went through after seeing my mother experienced this accident. And in so little ways, that is what the text said. That's how I interpreted it. I was very confused on that because this is what she said. Me, I never blamed anyone for the accident, least of all Tyler. It was just one of those things. A decade later, my understanding would shift part of my heavy swing into adulthood. And after that, the accident will always make me think of the Apache women and all the decisions that go into making a life, the choices people make together and on their own that combine to produce any single event. Grains of sand, incalculable, pressing into sediment, then rock. I get, as human beings, it makes sense for us to categorize things. It makes sense for us to find relation and be relatable with things. For example, my mom, she's been through a lot in her life. I would never say, you know, now I understand what's going on with Sheila because I also blah blah blah. Like I would never do that to my mom. Even though we both have trauma, we have different types of trauma, and I would be diminishing her trauma if I ever compared mine to hers. Even though I'm valid and has a lot of things that's going on with me and my trauma that I still work on today, my mom's trauma is just different than mine. Hers have different effects that trickles down generations, even with me, differently than mine would. The paths are different, the responses are different, the psychological effects are different. So I can never be like, me and my mother, there's any similarity there. And maybe that's because I do a lot of trauma work, and I view trauma as by incident, community, and the amount of times it happened to a person or in their lives. And they're so unique that even two siblings who grew up in a house together, experiencing trauma together, the effects of that trauma is going to be played or displayed differently between those siblings. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I just didn't understand that. It did not sit right with me, and that's what I'm going to say. Another thing I want to say before I end this clip, and then I'll do a wrap up of how I feel about the book overall, is as a therapist, I am constantly listening to people tell me their truth. And oftentimes when people are telling me their truth, and I would feel exhausted for them. And then I'll think to myself, if I, the outsider, is feeling exhausted by their truth, oh my God, how do they feel? Like, whoo, that must be draining to feel that every day. Like, just imagine. I'm just like trying to put myself in their shoes of like, if I'm exhausted, their feelings must be way more intense than mine is, because I didn't actually go through what they're saying their truth is. And I kept thinking that about this author, because from the very beginning of this book, you're getting insight into her mind, but not only insight into her mind, it feels very much like she is just a person in the background and recording things that happen into her life. It is hard for me to think that she is enmeshed in the story, because it feels like reading it that she's an outsider and she is just regurgitating what has been told to her about her life. That's how I'm imagining it. And I'm sure that's not how she planned to write this book or anything like that, but that is how it feels to me as a reader. Constantly throughout this book, we are hearing rhetoric from her father, rhetoric from her mother, and rhetoric from her brother Sean, who continuously to be abusive, which continuously stifles her voice and make her feel like she can't acknowledge the abuse, and the way her religious beliefs is tied up into her identity, especially her identity as a young girl, a teenager, and a young woman, is mind-blowing. And it is exhausting listening to her father say the most racist shit that could ever be said. And I know other people have said way more racist stuff, but it is exhausting as a black woman reading her memoir and knowing how her family felt about black people. This is another thing I wanted to address. I know a lot of people say that, you know, with memoirs or any book that an author should just write, which I agree. There's these new type of conversations being said like, hey, I know you should just write, but please warn your audience about what you're writing. That can be in the form of, you know, trigger warnings. It can be in the form of whatever. So the way this memoir is written, which is so different than any other memoir I've ever read, which is where she is just telling you this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. There's very little reflection on what has happened in her life. Very little. And if it is reflection, it's reflection for like a paragraph, a couple sentences, or maybe a word. What I think was a disservice in her book, and I hate to even say that because I don't like saying that about a person's memoir because it's their life. She did a disservice by not warning readers that she was gonna say the N-word repeatedly, and it was almost no reflection in her saying it. No reflection. I got a whole chapter about how her brother Sean, who abused her so much. One way for him to continue his psychological abuse was to call her the N-word repeatedly, daily. And it was used to be derogatory. It was used to be like, I hate black people, I'm racist. It was used in every effed up way you can think of. The whole time I'm reading, I'm waiting for her to give like an in-depth explanation of why she added that in the book. Versus other memoirs like Yes Please, even Jonathan Van Ness' book, when they included something in their book that was, you know, about racism or inequality or something, they will tell you what happened, and then they would be like, this is my in-depth reflection on that situation now looking back. We didn't really get that in this book, and I was just like, so we just gonna brush past it? And I'm just so confused. I just have more critiques than I have of good things about this book, and I feel terrible for it because this woman has experienced an extent amount of trauma, but I'm also being triggered reading her book, like, or feeling discomfort, I'll say that, and triggered, I'm gonna be honest, yeah, because the N-word was just jarring. It was like multiple. Y'all, I'm gonna forever just be perplexed about what I'm reading in this book. And I just wanted to say that. And I know this is probably going to be the longest clip out of the whole thing, but I'm just like, I don't get a lot of things, and I also get a lot of things. It's like, from a trauma lens, I totally get this book in its entirety up to this point of me being over 70% done. But also, if I take off my therapeutic hat and be the hat of me as a black woman, I'm also offended. So it's like both of those things are just competing and fighting each other in my brain, because I want, as a therapist and a human being, we should want to validate somebody as they walk through their truth and their pain. But when do their pain, like, what's the time limit on somebody else's pain then becoming your pain? And I'm trying to be like very cautious of what I say, because the internet is forever, and I would hate for someone to misunderstand what I'm saying. Yeah, this is probably one of the most difficult books for me to read, conceptualize, and discuss through the eyes of trauma and nuance and how it affects a reader, especially a reader who is not the intended audience, because I don't think I am the intended audience for this book. And I feel the same way about Untamed by Glenn Doley, that book as well. I feel like I'm not the intended audience. I feel like white women is the intended audience for that book. I don't know, I feel like I'm rambling now, but that is what I'm gonna say, and I'm just gonna keep it all in my video. So yep, on to the next part of the book. Well, we are done. I am done with reading Educated. I took some notes, and I do want to say something. I'm a very reflective person. I try to be as transparent as I want to be with the internet. I think a lot of my discomfort with reading Educated, other than the things I've already discussed, is that I know how it feels to be raised or in a family that has very strong beliefs about things. I know how it feels to experience religious trauma at such a young age that it's like imprinted on you and you can't escape it. I also know how it feels to run to education as your savior, or as a way to get out of feeling trapped, or feeling like you're not, like your trauma is just really got a hold on you, especially when it comes to religious trauma. I definitely understand how it feels, and I also understand how it feels to love and dislike or even hate people who were supposed to nourish you and be there for you, and they end up hurting you. I understand that tug and pull of wanting to see them as a human being and want to, you know, give them respect and love even though they didn't give it to you, or they abused you or hurt you. I understand the cycle of abuse. I understand it. I've been through it. And I think that's what makes me uncomfortable. Another thing is, you know, the author Tara was trained in understanding history, learning history, and that's pretty much how the book is written. It's written as if she is an outside observer of her own experiences. And although there is reflection in the book, I would say like 10 to 15% of it is reflection, and the other percentage, 85, whatever, I don't know math, 75, whatever, is pretty much just recalling and saying like what's happening. And I just go back to my earlier point of like, this had to be so exhausting. Like even writing what your father said, what Sean said, what Tyler said, what Aaron said, what Audrey said, what your mom said, what your mom's sister said, what your grandma said. Like, it just, in every way, people just let her down consistently. That is pretty much what you get by reading the book. Another thing is, I always find that even though I'm in a PhD program, academic rigor, especially when it pertains to like undergraduate, graduate school, or graduate school when you're getting your doctorate, does not allow for you to think of anything other than the academic prowess or the academic achievement or meeting deadlines. Because if you have anything else going on in your life, you are stressed out, a parent died, a cousin died, you are experiencing trauma, you have a lot of work through trauma, you are in a situation where now you are a caregiver, or you're this or you're that, whatever it is, it doesn't allow you to fall apart. Because the moment it starts looking like you're falling apart because of those things, apart from academics, because academics is like the last thing you want to do or pursue in most situations when you are dealing with a lot of emotional pain and a lot of emotional or physical or any type of trauma / violence. So I became enraged of the part of she was like, I didn't do anything for a year. And reading it and also consistently thinking about trauma and how it impacts people, I'm like, yeah, it is evident. You have laid it out for us clearly of why not thinking about this PhD or doing anything about this PhD was at the forefront of your mind. You're literally spiraling, waking up with nightmares. You're literally having stress responses to the trauma you have endured. That is exactly what you're running in the street. You're waking up screaming. You're experiencing a lot of traumatic things, and it's happening in your body, and you're not able to regulate anything. Emotional regulation, stress regulation. You can't even regulate your breathing. So you're not worried about no PhD. And when she was saying she didn't do anything for a year, and her teacher was like, maybe a PhD isn't for everyone. The academic rigor got nothing to do with her suffering. The girl is going through it. So I just get really upset, even as a person who loves education. I also know that I use education as a form to escape, but I love learning too. So even reconciling with that, loving to want to learn, and also realizing that, there's a line between like, am I escaping or am I genuinely learning, and coming to terms with that as a person who is trying to get through or push through or move through my trauma. I understand that pull and tug is what they say, and you can see that in how she writes this book. But for her professors to not even think of that is interesting to me, because yes, she even said in the book, she didn't tell these people. She didn't say, hey, I got all this going on. My dad is very strict in Mormon beliefs, and, and whatever he's thinking, and he's superstitious, and he is, have mental health issues or needs that hasn't been addressed, and my mom is out here acting like she has to believe everything that my father does. I have spent my whole childhood and adult life currently being beaten by my brother. She didn't say any of that. But my thing is, I don't understand how in academic spaces people don't look at you outside of the academic bubble as if you are only what you can give. You're only the product, the dissertation. Like, you're not a full human being who got other shit going on, and that exceptions can't be made or human to human connections can't be made, and just assuming right away that she can't do it because she can't do it. She could do it if she didn't have all this shit that she's going through. The fact that she made it day by day is a testament right there. The fact that that lady still tried to push through. The fact that she got on the plane to go to Cambridge. The fact that she got in her car and drove off. Like, the strength it took to do that. She has it in her, but there's other things that, you know, is keeping her in the loop of traumatic stress. So, even though this book was hard for me, and I have criticisms, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you should or you shouldn't read this book. I just want you to go in keeping in mind that this may not be like the typical memoir you read. You know, it's not like, let me tell you about my life or my reflections on my life in this equal part. That's what I'm used to in memoirs. Like, this is a story, this is how I reflected on it, and then this is a story, this is how I reflected on it. It just felt written like a nonfiction historical text with a little bit of input from the author splashed in. I feel like the last chapter, Educated, really gave you like more information to how she's feeling. But even when she wanted to talk about how she was feeling, she used quotes of other people. Talked about how other people dealt with stuff. It was never really close to the chest. But if you understand her life, you understand why she's not an open book and why she's not out here sharing and pouring all her whole heart to you. So I understand it, even though I have like conflicting feelings as well. So that's what I will say there. I am going to read the next book. I don't know what it will be, but I will come on and tell y'all what that is. But until then, I'll see you in the next clip. I watched, was it Queer Eye on Netflix? I really liked his spirit. Sometimes I did think that Jonathan overdid some things, but I don't know him that well. And I do know bits and pieces about his life. And I'm interested to see what he has to say. I mean, everybody has a voice. Everybody has something to say. I do believe some voices are crowding other voices, but that is a conversation for another time, and in no way reflection of Jonathan's book. I'm just saying, I want to hear his voice. All right, y'all, sorry. A little tear in the eye. Let me see if I can help this light. So, I finished, I think, 10 or 15% of Over the Top by Jonathan, and I'm liking it so far. You know, I can relate to a lot of the insecurities that they've felt. Also, I may have said or used he and him pronouns, but I'm wondering, because Jonathan is genderqueer, if they identify, like, feel connected to those pronouns, where those pronouns are at. It's not in their bio. I'm enjoying reading a book about someone who is famous and talking about their struggles with identity and, you know, just being insecure. I love reading books about people who I believe have more money than me, like when they were growing up, because I'm like, really, everybody be out here struggling. You know what I mean? Everybody be out here struggling. Other people struggle differently, but money don't mean that struggle doesn't exist. I'll continue listening and I'll check in there. Hey y'all, so I just finished Jonathan Vanis. I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing their name right. I just finished Jonathan's book, and I want to retract a statement that I said earlier. One of the reasons, trying to make sure my audiobook is off. One of the reasons why I truly enjoy reading memoirs is because you get a person's version of their honesty. And I say version not to diminish what they're saying, but to also honor that they're speaking their truth. It's their version of their truth. Other people might have other versions, but it's their truth, right? Before getting into this book, I was like, you know, I liked Jonathan from Queer Eye. I watched the show and I said that he was over the top. I want to be clear. When I said he was over the top, or when I said they were over the top, I was engaging in countertransference in the sense of, because that they're this big, bright personality, extroverted person, I know what it's like to be like that, and then people tell you that you're too much and tell you things like you're over the top because they want to dim your light. And I realized that that is what I was inadvertently doing when I first said what I said about Jonathan. So I want to apologize for that, because I know how it feels when, you know, people tell you that you're over the top, or that you're doing too much, or you're this or you're that. And I have felt that a lot. This is one of the most gut-wrenching and hilarious memoir I ever read. I remember listening to it as I was in my car, and Jonathan was talking about how they do not play about their brothers. They will come for your life and destroy you. So then there was a part of the book where Jonathan was like, I'll attack you like Tyra Banks did one of the models on Next Top Models and say, we were rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. And because that's like one of my favorite moments of American Top Model, that I just started laughing. And the thing is, because I thought like Tara, I don't know why I felt in that moment that Tara was in the wrong, but you know, that's not what we're here for. Another thing that I truly enjoyed about Jonathan's memoir is that even when it hurt, they were still speaking their truth. I like knowing random facts about a lot of random things. And if I was given a platform to talk about just my weird, out of the, just, I don't even know how to describe it, just like really niche, weird stuff that I enjoy to consume, I would love that. And Jonathan did that in the book. Like, Jonathan's telling you about this life and that life, and we'll compare it to Michelle Kwan, I think is Michelle's name, the famous figure skater, or famous gymnast, or Ronald Reagan's presidency, Monica Lewinsky, Bill Clinton, just so many random knowledge or wealth of knowledge that Jonathan has, which made the book more entertaining because you were just along for the ride. Not only were you learning about how Jonathan became Jonathan and the adversity that they have experienced, you're also learning about the US history, like in a weird way, and I truly appreciated that. So I definitely enjoyed this memoir full-heartedly, and I think that everyone should read it. If you want to read a memoir that's going to give you the truth but also give you comic relief, I think this is it. In 2020, the best book was A Promised Land by Barack Obama, which I was talking to Ashley about this recently. I think it was primarily written in an academic form, and even though I appreciated him talking about how he rallied and how he got things together in Chicago and his life with Michelle, his life with his kids, but it wasn't that much focus, in my opinion, on Michelle or his life with his kids. It was mainly focused on how to be a president, to be honest. I just read it and I was like, okay, step 1, step 2, here are some wins, here are some losses. And then he highlighted, you know, key players throughout his campaigns that really helped him get to where he's at today. And I really like the way that Barack Obama speaks. I think that he is super charismatic, super smart, super intelligent. Reading A Promised Land, I won't lie to you, similar to this book right here, The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. I felt like there were certain chapters that we didn't really need. I felt that it was such a big book. It took me a long time to read it, and I was like, I think some of these chapters were just like overwritten, if that's even a thing. I know it's a thing, but I felt like brevity would have really made the reader more engaged in the context, and that was just my main criticism of the book. I also appreciate him saying that there were things in his presidency or in his life that he did that he wasn't proud of, because that just shows us that he's human, whether your thoughts of him or not. Just coming from his voice really meant a lot to me, the reader, so I appreciated that book for that. The next book, 2021 Goodreads Choice winner, was Crying in H Mart, and I didn't read it. I started it, I didn't soft DNF it, and I didn't DNF it. The library said it's me, so I am excited to go back to Crying in H Mart, and I'm excited to read that one. Hey y'all, so remember in the beginning of this video I was like, oh, you're gonna catch me in different outfits, blah blah blah. Somehow I cannot find my clip to the book I'm about to talk about, which is Crying in H Mart, and I'll try my best to synthesize this as quick as I can, but also giving care to the author. Out of all of the books, this one was the hardest to get through, and it's because this is a woman who has a specific relationship with her mother in a lot of ways that I have a relationship with my mother. Watching her mother go through cancer and all the feelings that she's feeling about the experience, the resentment she's having for her father, the resentment that she's having for other people who get the chance to keep living their lives as if her mother didn't die. And there was just section of the books where she talked about like visiting different places that she went to with her mother and just being essentially pissed off by seeing everybody else living and happy and existing in a world where her mother is not there, even though her and her mother may have not seen eye to eye, you know, may not have been on the same page. Her Korean culture mixed with her American culture, you know, having some conflicting views, some conflicting values, and it came out in unhealthy ways towards her mother, or her mother towards her, or her dad towards her. It's just watching and listening to all those different complexities of how she was navigating the grief of losing her mother as her mother was alive, grieving the loss of her mother and feeling like she's alone in this world, although her father is still alive, but they have always not connected in a way that she connected with her mother. And there was a part of it where she constantly referred to her mother saying, you know, don't give everybody every part of you, keep some for yourself. This lady is not my mom, right? But that was so important for me to hear, because a lot of times I feel like as women of color, we are constantly being like, I gotta do all of this, gotta make sure everybody's okay. And at the end of the day, we're running on E. We got nothing to give. The gasolina is gone, okay? We're not even looking at the gas prices because we know we can't even afford it type stuff, right? And I mean afford it like mentally and spiritually. So it was just a very hard book to get through, and there were moments where I thought the author was being cruel to herself and cruel to her mother and cruel to her father. But you can also look at those instances throughout the book and be like, you know, this is grief. She is really grieving the loss of her mother. And also, I thought it was interesting how she was like, you know, telling her partner, we got to get married, we have to do this. And, you know, trying to create anything, grasping at straws, trying to create any type of happiness that would keep her mom alive, only in the end for her mother to not be there. It was just very hard to listen to, even when her mother passed away, and you know how she tended to her mother's body. The most powerful thing I got from this book was that no matter who you lost in your life, if y'all have a bond that is close to impossible to explain, or a strong bond, you have the right to grieve however long that is, and that it is important to grieve even when it's painful. And there were times where her and her father, you know, was going at each other because they both were grieving. She's grieving her mom and being alone. her dad is grieving the fact that this woman that he's been married to for I think over 30 years is no longer going to be in his life. So it was like they both were grieving, but grieving for different reasons. Overall, although this was a very difficult reading experience for me, I am thankful to know that there is a memoir out there about a woman of color experiencing cancer with someone that she truly loves and appreciates, but also have like some conflict with. This is an example of that, an example of how it exists in the world, and it also gives me some comfort of being like, the moments in when I was thinking selfish thoughts or having resentment towards someone, that I wasn't the only one thinking this. Like, I wasn't the only one pissed off, you know what I mean? And my mom's still living, and there's like things that I think about, like, could I ever do those again with my mom? You know what I mean? Is those things even possible? Like, can I do it? Will she do it? Will she have energy to do it? You know, she's tired all the time. So there's just like things that it was just hard. It's like most times when I read memoirs that have trauma in it that's related to experiencing the loss of a parent via cancer specifically, it just feels so big picture. And in this book, Crying in H Mark, the grief felt very specific. There was even times in listening to the book that I was just like, dang, were you taking notes along the way? Like, it was so detailed in her grief that most of those details, I either was like, damn, I can relate to it, or felt super ashamed and guilty for relating to some of the things. And I'm just like, damn, to be so brave to say, I'm gonna just say this how I felt, you know, this is what I was experiencing. And to also have a memoir of someone who's not only battling their own mental health, trying to also be strong for someone else, that was truly a struggle. So, you know, I just kept reading this book and trying to get through it. And it did take me the longest to read out of all of the books, because I just felt an immense amount of sadness while reading this book. And that is my opinions on this book. Hello, y'all. So I'm here to talk to y'all about Jeanette's book, I'm Glad My Mom Died. And I'm trying to like, let me move over so that it can be right here. I'm Glad My Mom Died. The title, right? The title already kind of let you know that this book is about to be about her and her relationship with her mom. So that was like my first inclination to what's going on. There was a lot of interviews and things happening around the time, but I didn't watch them. I was planning to read the book anyway, and it became 2022 Goodreads memoir pick, right? Was I bitter? Yes, because I thought Viola Davis was going to win. People of color rarely win in the memoir category for Goodreads. I think on this list of 10 years, we've only had 2 or 3. I'll have to fact check that, but I don't think it was more than 2 or 3 out of the whole 10 years. So that right there speaks volumes. What I will say is I have a couple thoughts about this book. The first one is, as I'm going through the book, understanding what's going on with Jeanette, I realized that her mom really set her up for being, as what we call now, a chronic people pleaser. Anything that she did, her mom had to make sure that Jeanette only thought of her mom, only served her mom. And I kept thinking about how that impacted her development as a child and what she must have been thinking. And we get some insights into that, not so deep, but we did get some insights to how she may have felt. I found her mom to be deplorable, to put, I don't know any other word to say it. And I can understand that her mom she had some struggles and she was dealing with her own thing. But that's what always upsets me about parenting and mental health, is when it's left unchecked. And I'm not going to say like every parent should know that, you know, that is not the case. You know what I mean? It's access, it's money. I mean, from what it sounds like, Jeanette family didn't even have a lot of money for a large part of her life. She was sleeping on like some kind of cot thing that they got from Costco or Sam Clubs in their living room. And at some point, grandparents moved into the house, so it made the house pretty crowded. So there's multiple ways or multiple reasons why mom became who she was. It's just really unfortunate that there were not things put in place to support mom so that she can be her best self and understand how she was inevitably traumatizing and hurting Jeanette. One of the parts that was really upsetting for me was learning how forceful Jeanette's mom was on maintaining Jeanette's innocence as a child, thus forcing her to have anorexia and to want to be anorexic and, you know, just really focus on not eating. There were times in the book where they would share like a scoop of ice cream, and I'm like, that is horrible for a young girl to be experiencing that and already having such warped self-image before she's even in double digits. That was really upsetting for me. In addition to just hearing how, I don't know any other way to describe it and to put it in just the most layman terms, is obsession that Jeanette's mom had over Jeanette and her career. It's even like when she moved out and was in an apartment and her mom would cling to her like a baby, a newborn baby every night. You know, her mom also had cancer and battled with that, but her mom also weaponized the fact that she had cancer towards her children and towards anybody outside of that. And I also wondered how acting agency was able to put up with her mom, because she was a force of nature. She was not to be fucked with. So I'm wondering even how that even came to be and how they were able to, you know, cope and manage with her. And one of the most just oddest and I felt inappropriate parts of the book was when Jeanette would talk about, you know, taking a bath and how her mom insisted on bathing her and her brother at the same time while they're 16 years old. I think he was a little older. And that the one time she was like, Mom, I can bathe myself, her mom freaked out, cried, and was like, you know, you don't want to be my little girl anymore. And when she got boobs or when she was growing up, her mom would cry and cry and cry, and, you know, just have these big emotional outbursts because of Jeanette's growing older. And Jeanette was like, I knew how to get rid of this. I knew how to always be small and be petite. And that is when she really dived into her anorexia. And I was just like, oh my God, to experience so much of this at a young age is just heartbreaking, you know, to say the least. I also thought about the way that the book read, as if Jeanette at a lot of points was separating herself from her words. It felt a lot like the outsider looking into her life, similar to Educated by Tara, I forget her last name, but a lot of parts of that book, it felt like she was observing her life versus being an active participant in her life. And what I know about trauma and injuries, psychological injuries, is that sometimes people do that to protect themselves, or sometimes it's just too difficult. And writing a book about your life and the ways in which you have been hurt and injured, it can be difficult. So I'm wondering if that was done purposefully just to help her get through this. And the memoir was just a piece for her to get through it and a part of her healing journey. I also wondered what it feels like to have a parent and you want to be honest with them, but anytime you try to find individuality or separate yourself from them, they react in such a violent way. And I was just thinking, like, what do you do? How do you manage that? How do you be able to speak your truth about them while they're living? So it makes sense why she's glad her mom died, because now she's able to speak her truth. Now she's able to confront the parts of her that she had to suppress because her mom wouldn't let those parts of her be present or be in the room. So yeah, those are my thoughts of that book. I can see why it is a pick for the Goodreads section for the memoirs of 2022, even though I connected and enjoyed Finding Me by Viola Davis much better. I also don't want to take away from Jeanette's experiences and how she felt. And I hope that she continues to find hope and find growth in what she's doing. One of the biggest critiques about the book, in my opinion, is there were times where she talked about things her mom said or things that she thought that was just racially inappropriate or inappropriate towards gender or inappropriate towards sexuality. And then I didn't feel that there was any really reflection on those things specifically, and that it has the same feeling with Tara. And maybe she wasn't ready to talk about that. But I often wonder the feedback that people get when they write a memoir. And if the memoir is, I don't know, like the structure of how people write memoirs, but I'm always interested about the feedback that they get and what kind of feedback they get when they write a memoir, and do they, add some of that feedback into their books. So that's what I have to say about Jeanette's book, I'm Glad My Mom Died. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for watching me review those books vlog style. And I hope that you can add to the conversation in the description box below. But right now I'm going to take some time to rank these books as I see fit. And I'm going to put the graphic right here. Now, and I'm saying as I see fit, and having a hard time really giving any of these memoirs a rating, so I don't think that I will be doing that. But the first book that I enjoyed the most out of all of these were Crying in H Mart. It really touched my heart of reading a book about someone who lost someone that was so instrumental in their lives. So that was pretty hard to read, and it was also eye-opening to read as well. The next book that's my favorite is This Star Won't Go Out. I truly appreciated this book. It was done so well to me. It had the perfect blend of what other people in the story thought about the young girl who was dying of cancer, and it had her actual stories of how she felt in the moment, which I thought was very invaluable to the reading experience. The third one was I Am Malala, and to be honest, if I didn't have This Star Won't Go Out and Crying in H Mart, it would be I Am Malala, because I truly love that book. And I feel like Crying in H Mart, This Star Won't Go Out, and I Am Malala should really just be in the same category in terms of what I liked about the books and the content and how it physically moved me and also brought me to tears and also gave me a bigger understanding of how a person can experience this type of pain, this type of grief. And it felt similar in those themes, even though these are three different people, three different cultures. My feeling towards these three books were just the same. The next book would be When Breath Becomes Air. And again, such a beautiful story. And the ending really took me out when I read it a couple years ago. And it's something that I'll always remember. And if I tell y'all what it is, it would be a spoiler. But that's definitely in fourth place. In fifth place is Over the Top by Jonathan Van Ness. And I thought out of all of the memoirs thus far, I found that out of the memoirs that I've ranked prior to Over the Top, what stood out for me in Over the Top was I felt like Jonathan was a bit more raw of points in his life that he wanted to change, or parts of Jonathan's life that he wanted to look at introspectively. I felt like it was really a book about all the things they've been through and how they overcome them, even when some of those things were self-inflicted. So I definitely appreciated that. I'm glad My Mom Died would be the next book, because I think that it is really powerful for someone to speak about how they can love and have such disdain for somebody, specifically a parental figure, and miss them, but also upset with them about the things that they've done to them. So this book spoke to me about the complexity of loving someone that is supposed to protect you and support you. The next one was A Work in Progress by Connor Franta, I believe. And I thought this was good as well, for the most part, because I don't think I've ever read a memoir that focuses on someone who is a content creator. Promised Land is the next book that I've ranked. Again, I do think that it was a lot of information, and I put it lower down because of the reasons that I've already stated. I just felt like for The Promised Land, I wanted more about his personal life, rather his political journey, even though I know that I need that part, right? I want to know what he did, things he didn't really like that he did, things that he was proud of, which he did talk about in the book, but I wanted more of his personal life. But I also understand how you had to keep that close to the belt, but this is where I ranked it. What Happened is another book. It's by Hillary Clinton, and like I said, I had some issues with it, and it just had to be in the ranking of where it's at. I didn't know any other place to put it. And now that I'm thinking about it, like 2 books by politicians are low ranked on my memoir ranking. And this is from most enjoyable to less enjoyable, if I haven't said that already. And the last book is Educated, because I just did not like that reading experience for the most part. There were times I was very frustrated with the author and her actions, and I was very frustrated with the adults and her brother, and how they spoke to her, how they treated her, how they beat her. So that was very, it was hard to tussle with those things, right? Because I'm like, why did you say this and why did you do that? But I'm also like, somebody need to protect this girl. So I had to deal with those dichotomous thoughts throughout my reading experience. Okay, well, let me know if there is a book that you would have ranked differently. By watching this video, were you like, okay, I'm gonna read this book, I'm not gonna read this book? Just let me know your overall thoughts. Put a heart emoji in the comments if you don't have anything to add and you just was watching the video. Have a wonderful day. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye.